Welcome to episode 1 of the eShopperReviews interview podcast. Today we are delighted to be talking with Luke Wild from the SwitchStars YouTube channel. Luke, it's great to have you here today.
Hey, it's good to be here. It's always good to get a bit of publicity out there for the channel and the sort of cause that I've been fighting against since the start, and having discussions with people who have a similar interest and are interested in sort of tackling the issues that a lot of us are facing.
So, can you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and sort of what you do on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a huge gamer since I was like tiny. I used to play like Commodore and then moved on to NES and Sega and stuff. So I've always had a big passion for gaming. And then I got to a point in my life where I was still gaming a lot at the age of like 34 or something like that. And felt I needed to channel the efforts I was putting into gaming into something a bit more productive. And so I started the YouTube channel. And I wasn't too sure where I was going with it at first, and then ended up settling on the Nintendo Switch because I'd bought the console, not played it, and thought, well, I'll play some games. And I found when I was buying games that there was no rating system, and I didn't know what I was buying, and a lot of the stuff that I was buying was subpar. So that's kind of how the direction went with the channel, focused in on the Nintendo Switch.
I feel like the lack of a rating system is a part of why I created eShopperReviews as well, because I mean, apart from the big well-known games, everything else is like a Wild West where it's anybody's guess. Is this good? Is this bad? Who knows?
Yeah, and see, it's a double-edged sword because Nintendo have kind of brought it on themselves with it, because they did open the floodgates and they relaxed the whole procedure for them getting games on there, which allowed more indie developers and stuff to publish on there. They've got a whole system which is kind of apart from Nintendo. It's not like other sort of systems. They have third-party publishing teams, which, as long as the publishers that they're speaking to are sort of verified, they kind of vet themselves. But also that brings in the issue of anyone can publish. A lot of indie game publishers, solo publishers struggle, but if you get in with a genuine publisher, an established publisher, you can get almost anything onto the shop. And that's how we find ourselves now.
To give listeners some background, my first interaction with Luke was when both of us were discussing on Reddit the game Hammer 2, a game I think would be fair to call the poster child for asset flips on the Nintendo Switch. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them that have come since Hammer 2, but Hammer 2 was one of the first that I encountered, and this was before I knew anything really about what asset flips were. But I put a video up for a game called The Bullet Time of Revenge, and I reviewed the game as though it was a proper game, and then I had loads of people commenting going, this is an asset flip, this is an asset flip, and I was like, what is an asset flip? So I was kind of stung with it, not even knowing that this was a thing. Like, I'd not looked into this kind of thing before, but apparently it was rife on the PC and stuff, and it was one of the most prolific asset flips of all time. And I had no idea. And then they released another one, Hammer 2 Reloaded, and then a third one. So there is actually 3 Hammer 2 Reloadeds on the Nintendo Switch still, from 3 different publishers. That was kind of a big bugbear. That was kind of something that spurred me on, because before this I was just covering like trash titles, saying, oh, this is shovelware, you should be avoiding this. But now I had sort of a second direction, a second fight to fight. And it was all because of Hammer 2 Reloaded that I got into fighting against asset flips as well, because I wanted to get back at me being stung and me looking like an idiot. So then it was like, right, I better do some research before this happens again and I look like an idiot again.
So, just to back up a little bit, I wasn't aware what an asset flip was until about 6 months or so. So, like, for somebody who's completely new to the term, how would you describe an asset flip?
So there's an argument to be had of what an asset flip is.
Right.
There's like a bit of a grey zone in the centre, because you've got things like the Unity Asset Store, and if a developer is new to the game or isn't that experienced or doesn't have the time, they can go on there and they can buy assets or pre-made pieces of games. So it could be anything from 3D models or full environments or just the base code for different engines. So if you're making like a first-person shooter, you can get the code there that's already created for you. You haven't got to spend all that time building it and everything, and you can just focus on the stuff that you know you can do that's within your ability or within your time or your money. And the cheap ways of sort of building the foundations of a game. And that's the whole point, building a foundation of a game or supplementing something that you're creating. Asset flips, on the other hand, are entire games made solely out of assets, but it also depends how they've been put together, because you could have several different assets building a game. So you could have like a top-down engine and then have some sprites moving about, and all of them are assets, but how you put them together and what effort has gone into it. And this is where the line blurs, because a lot of the asset flips that I've covered, assets that you buy off the store come with demo files or demo levels and stuff. And when I'm covering the asset flips, I'm talking about these guys that are buying these assets and then taking the demo files and then publishing them directly to Switch without doing any work whatsoever, or doing minimal work like taking a racing engine and sticking some car models in there and then publishing it. There's no effort on their half, because the Nintendo Switch is Unity is one of sort of the easiest ways to export to Nintendo Switch, which is why 99% of the asset flips and scam games and low quality games are built in Unity, because it's established, it's there, it's a click of a button to get it from being an asset pack onto the Nintendo Switch console.
I mean, okay, so I've looked at a couple of asset flips myself, and I've looked on Unity, I've looked on Unreal Engine, and there are some that are just extremely expensive. So how are these people making money on an asset flip if some of these are like $200, $500 for just an asset?
That's the question, isn't it? And I don't want to speculate and get myself in trouble, but there are certain websites where you can go and get them for free. And
Oh.
yeah, and looking at the early days of the channel when I was covering asset flips more, and some
Is
of the asset flips I
is
saw,
is this a possible thing where someone might be saying something along the lines of "Yar me matey"?
maybe, yeah, it's along those lines. So you can acquire them for free without any sort of monetary exchange. So the people that have produced them and are selling them legitimately on the Unity Asset Store, there's alternative asset stores that sort of sell the same thing for free.
Oof.
So I've looked into them and I've gone, well, this thing's selling for like, back in the early days of the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo cracked down on it, but these things were selling for like 9 cents. So they weren't making any cash whatsoever on these when they were on sale. And even at full price, they were maybe $1. And then you look at the asset packs and they're like $1,000 or something. So it's kind of like, are they really, after Nintendo's got the cut and everything else, are they making any money, or did they actually invest in these assets? The question is there, and I do have some evidence to back up these claims, because some of the assets that I've found were no longer on the Unity Asset Store. They were no longer provided on that, but the versions that they were using were on these alternate asset stores.
Yeah, I was going to
Oh, yeah,
ask
I know for
about that.
sure.
Why do you think that the asset creators take the assets off of the asset stores? I've noticed a lot of them have been doing that.
I think it just depends. I don't know, like I don't know enough about the Unity Asset Store and what the licensing fees are to have stuff sold on there, whether there are any upfront fees or ongoing sort of fees to host your own assets on there. But maybe they've just sort of got the money they wanted from them and took them off, or they've licensed them out to other alternative stores and stuff like that, or sold the assets itself to a private company. There's a number of different reasons why they could be disappearing off the stores, or they could be looking and going, people are making asset flips out of these, I don't want my name being tarnished.
So I wanted to go back to something that you had said a moment ago. You were talking about kind of how the asset flips are created from a demo included with the assets sold on the store. And my impression of this was always that the demo was included as an indication, hey, this is maybe kind of an indication of the sort of thing you could use this asset for. And the asset flipper is just like, okay, well, I'll just sell that as a completed game. But ideally, they would be using it to create their own content. And you mentioned how they'll be piecing together different assets from different places, or potentially even creating their own content from just from scratch. And
Yeah.
I would imagine that ideally we would see games that use these assets in a way where you wouldn't even know the asset is being used because it's been transformed so much. Obviously, that's not what's going on here, but I'm kind of wondering where the cutoff is. At what point would you say someone using one of these assets is not actually an asset flip? At what point does it become something that we should consider a genuine game?
I think this is the same thing that I said before, is with the grey zone there, because there are people that argue, oh, well, the assets are there to be used. It doesn't matter how they used them, they bought and paid for them. They can publish whatever they like. For me, I feel like, take for example the Universal Fighting Engine. It's a baseline asset. You can do so much stuff, and people have made amazing fighting games with it. There are several on the Switch that use the same engine, but then you look at something like Urban Street Fighting from PixArt, which uses it, and they've used all the stock stuff from it. I feel like you have to, for me, and it comes back to being a passionate gamer and wanting to support indie developers and seeing the amount of effort that goes into some of these indie games, that yes, they are using assets and stuff. No doubt they wouldn't have created everything from scratch. But to me, it comes down to the amount of effort and seeing that effort on display. If I can go onto the Switch eShop and see a game and open it up and go, I can immediately tell that's an asset. If I can immediately tell it's an asset and it takes me a minute to go onto Unity and search a couple of keywords and find it, to me, that's an asset flip through and through. Do you know what I mean? I could play it, but I can't see what the base coding's like. I can't see how it feels from the base coding, but I can look at it and go, well, on a surface level, there's very little effort gone into this. And a lot of times I can play the demo files as well, which are on the thing, and play like a web-based demo, and they play identical. There has to be a distinct difference between what the asset looks like, how it plays, like, to make it not an asset flip.
So,
I have no issues people using all these assets. Do you know what I mean? They're made
for
to
sure.
be used. But if you can look at it and go, well, that uses that asset, that uses that, and they've basically just been jigsawed together into a game which anyone could do. There's no effort or passion gone into making that, and that's a big reason why I fight these things, because there are hundreds of indie devs out there that don't get the chance to showcase the games, but you go into the Switch eShop and you find an asset every week, 2 assets every week, and you're like, these guys have got the limelight, these guys have managed to get the games onto the store, these so-called games which are asset flips, and there's hundreds out there that don't get the opportunity because of these.
Are there any like developers, and I use air quotes for this because obviously they don't work as a developer, but what developers do you consider to be the worst offenders when it comes to asset flips? Or can you even name them without potentially getting in trouble?
I can, and I have already named them. Because my focus has moved a little away from asset flips, and they have died out a little more, you do still see them, but not so much because they're not specifically pushed out by the developers themselves. Now they tend to come from bigger publishing companies, and I can look at them and go, this publisher has published this asset flip, but they've obviously been approached an indie developer to do that. But yeah, I mean, I put out a video on PixArts and asset flippers, sort of a dedicated video on the subject, and I named and shamed quite a few. And I don't even want to mention his name, but the main guy of PixArts, he wasn't all too happy about it, but he was one of the worst at the time. But yeah, if you want to know more details, you'll find the PixArts eShop Asset Flippers video and check out the comments because we had a bit of a fun chat in the comments, me and this so-called developer, and he thought he was in the right by doing what he was doing. He didn't see anything wrong with it.
So he actually got in touch with you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's in the comments saying different stuff to me, trying to justify his actions, and it's like, I don't really care. You haven't got any leg to stand on with it. Like, what you're doing's not right in my mind, and you're not going to convince me otherwise.
So, aside from having a public debate in the comment section about it, have you gotten any other retaliation for like the content you put up on your YouTube channel or anything of that sort?
Yeah, this year specifically has been quite a hot one.
Oh.
Speaking of asset flips, about a month back I published a video on Ace Robot Combat. That was by Max Interactive Studio, who also coincidentally released a version of Hammer 2 Reloaded. So I'd already thrown them under the bus for that a while back, and then I released this and I basically said, this uses this asset. It's very similar to the asset. I said I've not played the game, but I know it uses this asset. I played the web demo, and from the looks of things, it's pretty much the same game with a few assets thrown in there. And the video was not necessarily a review of the game. It was more a watch out for this developer because you're probably getting this asset with it and nothing more. And then he decided to try and copyright take down the video. But yeah, he did that, and then a few months before that, I got another copyright takedown from Midnight Works, who is the scam game publisher.
That's wow. So these people are pretty unhappy with you, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think I've rubbed them up the wrong way somehow.
Do you feel like your work on this topic or your videos have actually had an impact on them then?
Yeah. Not only from like a consumers with all the comments that I get on the videos saying, you saved me some money there and stuff, but especially when it comes to the scam games, and that was the key reason why Midnight Works issued the copyright takedown notice, which was rejected by YouTube. But the main reason was because it made them look bad and it was having an impact on them. And I've had several indie devs who have watched the video that they tried to take down email me and comment on the video and say, I was approached by these guys, thanks for the video, I'm not going to go with them because of this video or because of what you kind of said. So yeah, I feel like they're having an impact on sort of both sides. A small impact, but an impact nonetheless.
For sure. That's great.
I feel like I should ask for the sake of our listeners. You've used the term scam multiple times now. Maybe we should transition now to talking about the scams that you're talking about. What is a scam? How do you define that?
So I spoke to Nintendo Life about this one because they covered the whole thing about scam games off the back of The Last Hope. I don't know if you saw that game. It was
kind of a copycat game, very extremely loosely based on Sony PlayStation, the Last of Us game.
Yeah, I mean the gameplay was the whole appearance and stuff of it was quite similar when you look at the character models and stuff. But yeah, I mean that kind of defines it as well. That game itself, it's like you look at it and you go, I think I'm getting this thing, but in actuality you're getting something else. And I said to Nintendo Life on the subject of scam games when I was defining it for them, it's like the difference between an asset flip and a scam when it comes to the Switch eShop at least is you go on and you find an asset flip and you can go, this game looks terrible, because they tend to have legitimate screenshots. The descriptions are pretty wishy-washy. They're just basic descriptions and stuff. They don't promise anything. Whereas a scam game, and the very first scam game that I published a video on was Cop Car Police Chase Simulator or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The actual screenshots for the game didn't in any way, shape or form represent the in-game visuals. They're completely fake screenshots. And then you move on to the description, and the descriptions are highly embellished, and a lot of the times they won't actually contain some of the features that they mention. And the majority of scam games that I have covered either have fake screenshots or the descriptions falsify what you're actually getting in the game. So think of it as going to McDonald's and ordering a burger and you get some chicken nuggets. It's like, I ordered this on the menu, but I got this instead. Or going out and buying a music track and it not actually being what you expected. Do you know what I mean? It's that bait and switch. You're being advertised one thing but getting another, and it's like, how is this even legal? Like, you look at the legalities of it and false advertising and stuff, and this, like, false advertising 101, none of the stuff actually matches, and the quality of the games are incredibly poor. There's just 101 reasons why these would qualify as being scams.
I don't know too much about how Nintendo regulates this. Do you feel like Nintendo has done anything to limit these asset flips being on the eShop, or have they just been a bit laissez-faire about it?
From my experience, they've done very little because they have opted to open the floodgates, as I said, and whilst this does benefit indie devs and pushes more content onto the shop and gives people an opportunity, it also allows stuff like this to happen. And I feel that's mainly down to how Nintendo actually vet the games going onto the store, so how they decide what gets to go on there. Because there's been legitimate developers and publishers that have spoken to me and said, I couldn't get my game published, how is this on the store? Like I said, they have something called the third-party publishing team who work with third-party publishers, and they've got a separate one for AAA publishers, so they've got essentially two different streams. The AAA guys work with the AAAs, the third parties work with these third-party publishers such as Midnight Works and everyone else. But if you're already established as a publisher on another platform, or you proved, oh yeah, for example, Midnight Works, they started off publishing on mobile, so they already had a portfolio to put forward and go, oh, we've got all these games, people are buying them, people are downloading them. So then they had the in right away, and that's why they approach other people to publish the games for them, because it's an easy in. But I feel Nintendo and the third-party teams don't do the due diligence with them. Clearly, they can't be doing the due diligence with them when stuff like this is happening, from what I understand, and from the wording that I've had directly from Nintendo support teams when I've emailed them. It's like this whole system's designed to cut the green light in and the sort of like the stuff that Steam has when games get greenlit. So they go on there for trials and stuff, people play them, people see, oh yeah, they're good, they're bad, and then they either get greenlit and put onto the shop for real, or they don't. So it's intended to sort of get rid of that element, which I feel is an important element. But then that's only one step of it, because once they're on the store, they could then step in and do something about it then when people complain about them. But it doesn't happen. And I feel it all comes down to sort of Nintendo's, I don't even know the word for it, like
detached.
Well, yeah, I mean they're kind of detached from consumers, but it's sort of, what's the store there for? Let's be honest, the store's there to make money.
So if you could talk to Nintendo and give suggestions and the like, what would you suggest that Nintendo change to make the eShop better in terms of preventing the asset flips from going on there, and just for other developers who want to be on the platform?
I kind of think it's a pretty simple solution. If you look at the amount of games that go onto the eShop, maybe you're talking, so we've had about 2,500 games go on this year alone. So per month, you're talking 200 games, so 50 games a week. You could easily have a team of 5 people playing those games and testing them and going, yeah, this looks like it's up to our standards, our quality, the gameplay is fine, there's no real bugs. Let's compare it to what the publishers have stated is the features of it. Let's see what the screenshots are like. And if all they marry up, then yeah, publish it, because you're getting a legitimate product there. And you know, you're not publishing something where people who have never played that game are going onto the store, seeing the game and going, oh, this looks like a decent game. Then they're getting it and going, I've just bought something that's not like as advertised. You could easily solve the issue of these scam games by doing that, and just having people, say, such as myself, who know a bit about gaming and can see that there's no effort gone into that, or, do you know what I mean, that can actually play a game and test it and go, yeah, there's some quality to this. I get comments all the time about the Nintendo seal of approval, and I've mentioned it in my other videos. It's ironic that Nintendo almost single-handedly saved the gaming community in the 80s after the big gaming crash, almost single-handedly saved it, and it was for this exact cause, because the market was flooded with low-quality games, that it crashed last time. It's just like, it does make me laugh sometimes when I think about it, and I go, like, we're looking at the same thing that they were fighting against in the 80s, that they're now kind of embracing, with the sort of lack of effort to stop it happening.
Not only to focus on the negative, I know you review a lot of genuinely good games too. Can you think of any examples where you went in to review a game thinking it would be terrible, but it ended up being really good?
I'd have to have a quick look back through my list. There have been quite a lot of surprises, to be honest. Like, I try not to judge straight off the bat on games, because I've done it before and gone, this isn't as bad as I thought it'd be. But also from a review point, if you go in with those sort of defined biases towards it, or sort of like judging a book by its cover, you can't keep an open mind to sort of goods and positives. You're always going to see them. I mean, admittedly, when it comes to scam games, and I've done enough of them to know the track record of these people, the likelihood is that they are going to be terrible games, and I go in kind of knowing that and ready to shoot. There have been a few surprises, though, down the line, of more like, this is a really small indie team, and I'm playing a game from a really small indie team, but goddamn, this is good. Or it's like a solo devs game, and I'm like, this is a fantastic game that deserves a lot more attention. So Matt Glanville, he's like a solo dev, and he does a load of small, really sort of small indie games, and he's got one called Ghost Grab 3000, which is a really awesome little sort of indie arcade game.
Wow,
He's done quite
I
a few
pride
good ones.
myself on having played a lot of really obscure games. I can't even recall having heard about that one.
Yeah, so he's produced quite a few, like, small ones. He produced one called Ghost Grab 3000, which is my favourite one of his, and he did one called Singled Out, which is another like arcadey one. But he does these like really small arcade projects, which are actually really good. Like, they're surprisingly good for like the visuals of them and stuff, because they are like sort of cartoony animated type ones. But yeah, they've been really good. They've impressed me. I kind of think of anything that I'd give 5 stars as being sort of really impressive. Like, I've kind of gone away from the star rating system in general, because I've always said it's more of an arbitrary thing. Like, a rating system doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, that's my own personal opinion and rating on it. And yeah, it's an arbitrary thing, because you get viewers that watch and come back because they support and sort of appreciate your opinion, and they trust your opinion on stuff. But I've kind of moved away from doing ratings so much anymore, because I do feel like people just need to watch the content of the video and then decide for themselves. I don't need to tell them that something's good. They could watch my entire review and go, okay, that's what the game's about, it looks terrible, so I'm not going to buy it anyway.
So obviously you have some good examples on your page. For gamers who are looking to avoid the bad stuff, are there any good hints that you'd have for them, stuff for them to watch out for to avoid the scams and the asset flips and stuff when they're just scrolling through the eShop looking for a hidden gem?
It's hard to tell sometimes, because some of these publishers and developers aren't very good at making thumbnails, and in my early days as a YouTuber, I can kind of sympathize with that, because I'm still learning when it comes to thumbnails, what is eye-catching, what looks good, what doesn't. But you can kind of look and go, low quality thumbnail, open it up, let's have a look at the screenshots. Like I said, some of them are deceptive, like Matt Glanville's games. You'd look at it and go, this doesn't look the best, it's like cartoony and stuff. But it's kind of like, especially when it comes to the scam games, you go on there, and if you've played the Switch for a while, it's more difficult when you've just got a Switch, because you don't know the capabilities of the system. After a while, though, you know that the system, it's not like an Xbox Series X. It cannot run certain things. So when you see these screenshots of games and they're like, oh, they've got like fog and stuff in them, shadows and everything, and if they look too good to be true, they likely are. A lot of the times, though, they're taken from screenshots from a PC version or pre-rendered images, so this is where it's quite difficult to determine. And there was, up until recently, with the scam games, I mean, they still do it a little bit now, really long titles, because they're wanting those games to show up in searches, so they will stick anything like Hooligan Simulator, for example. That was one that was, the entire title is Hooligan Simulator, San Gangster Andreas Fight for City Battle Gang Shooter Police. So you can see exactly where they're going with this one. The title's got nothing really to do with the game itself. They're just going for all those high SEO optimized words that are going to appear in searches straight away, and people are going to see, this is 99 cents. I'm going to click on that, take a look at it. A big thing with the scam games is when they say realistic graphics or stuff to do with realism. They often say like super realistic graphics, atmospheric sound, but it's the same thing. It's like a copy and paste description. If you've seen the same thing over and over, or super embellished descriptions, like I said, those are big things with the scam games, which I noticed. They've got loads of details, loads of different features in them. And you're thinking, if you're promising all this stuff and then you're going, I'm selling it for 99 cents, which is another big thing. 99% of these scam games will be on sale constantly. So my biggest advice is if you're going to look at buying a game, go on to Deku Deals. It's a website which shows all the deals on the Switch currently. You can go on there, you can search up a game, and you can see the price history, and you can see that this game is almost always on sale for 99 cents. They're selling it at like $12.99. It's almost always on sale for 99 cents, so you're talking like 90% discount permanently, more or less.
Like those mattress stores where it's always having a closing sale to give you this imaginary idea that you're getting a good deal when really you're not.
Yeah, so it's kind of that thing of if it seems too good to be true, then it probably is. And that's like with everything to do with these kind of games. Asset flips and sort of shovelware games, you kind of can look at them and go, well, I know what I'm getting for my money here. I can see the screenshots look pretty bad. I'll take a punt on it. The scam games are the real problem, though. But it's all these things, all these little deceptive things that add up, like the long titles, like the fake screenshots, the embellished descriptions, all these different little tells where there's something that's niggling away going, something doesn't really seem that right with them. But yeah, Deku Deals is a really good one to go on and kind of see the price history of certain things. And also just with a Switch, because there is no rating system, do your research, go onto YouTube, search for reviews. You'll usually find a review or you'll find some kind of gameplay footage which you can base your opinion on.
Yeah, I feel like that's all really good advice. I use Deku Deals myself, and they are fantastic. Do you have any final thoughts regarding the topics we've discussed here?
I just think it's one of those things where if you're a passionate gamer and you're passionate about it, a lot of people game just to game. But if you are a passionate gamer and you are interested in sort of this kind of stuff and you can see the damage that they're causing, then like I started to do, just start speaking out about it, because it's not just about saving people money. It's about the indie developers that don't get the opportunities. And these people are essentially stealing those opportunities from them because they're filling up the limited space that is on the eShop, the limited real estate to display games and stuff week in, week out with these kind of games. And people are falling for them and buying them, rather than there being some sort of system in there where Nintendo vet it and go, okay, these are quality games. They may look like rubbish, but they're up to a certain quality. So you can safely bet on, I'll pay $2 for this and I'm getting a reasonable game. Here, they're selling them for like 99 cents and people are buying them, and then that makes them more reluctant then next time to spend money or take a chance on certain games as well. But yeah, I think that'd be my biggest sort of, if I could say to people, just speak up about these, get the word out there that this is actually happening and help everybody else out as well with it. Just stop these guys from doing what they're doing, because they are making a mint. Like, I've seen the sales figures on some of this stuff and the money that these publishers are making solely off the back of selling these games which can't even barely be called games. And they don't care about consumers, they don't care about games at all. They've got no passion for it. They're just looking at turning a buck.
Right. Well, finally, are there any projects you're working on that you'd like to mention, or web pages you'd like listeners to check out?
I've just published my latest update on the scam game, so that's kind of a backstory, like everything we just discussed today. That's kind of a bit of a history of where it all started and where we're up to and where we could be in the future. So if you're interested in kind of getting a bit more of a backstory of where I've gone with it and what works I've put into it and what's happened along the way, that's a good one to watch. In terms of websites, like I said, Deku DLC is the number one if you're looking for finding out decent sales. But there's a lot of good content creators out there that are trustworthy and stuff and will give you sort of legitimate opinions. My good friend over at Switch Corner, Alex, he's not got biased opinions on stuff. If you go into like main vendors like IGN and stuff, there are a lot of times they're paid to say good things about stuff. But Switch Corner and stuff, they're good guys. I don't know any websites really you can go to. I'm working on a website at the moment to try and get a website up so that we can do this whole rating system and stuff. So that's a project I'm working on. And I'm also looking at putting out a long form video, my first long form video on the history of Nintendo Switch. A year by year account of the biggest news and all the biggest releases. That's going to be an interesting one, but a little side project I'm working on, hoping maybe to get one out for Christmas and just see how it goes, because it's going to be a bit of a change of pace and a new kind of content as such for the channel.
And of course, we will be including links to your YouTube channel and your Patreon in the text for the YouTube video that we're going to be putting out on this. Luke, thank you again for talking with us today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it. It's always good to chat about this kind of stuff and just get a bit more awareness out of there, really.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And that wraps things up for this eShopper Review interview podcast. eShopper Reviews is sponsored by the kind donations of our Patreon patrons, and you can find our Patreon page at patreon.com/eShopperReviews. This month's sponsors are Ben, Andy Miller, Exline, Homer Simpin, Johannes, Talisa, Francis Ops, Gabriel Coronado Medina, Ilya Zarev, Jared Wark, Christopher Wolf, and Seth Christianfeld. Thank you all for your contributions. Thank you again for listening, and once again, this has been Jen Ip
and Jake McNeil.
We'll see you all on our upcoming game stream, and in the meantime, we hope you found this content helpful. Catch you all next time.
Later.